Oh, please say that I've got to start to try and get along with people better. I'm funny. All the kids think I'm funny. I don't want to be. I want to be normal. I want to start to try and be a whole person before it's too late for me.
When are you going out about, Carrie?
I've been invited to the prom.
Prom.
As I remember, the cast was just a dream for the most part. It's like most of them was their first feature, and they were as committed and devoted to trying everything. They were like old troopers. They were afraid of nothing. They would do anything. It was one of those great cast experiences.
The first time that I met Brian was in a casting session, and he and George Lucas were sharing a casting session. And Brian was looking for people for Carrie, and George was looking for people for Luke Skywalker, which is what I ended up auditioning for in that session. And I think they were sitting there going, oh, I like him, and I want him. I want to make sure I call him back. And ultimately, I didn't get Luke Skywalker, but I got Tommy.
George and I were both looking for unknowns. So we sat together and basically went through hundreds of boys and girls looking for the cast for Carrie and Star Wars.
I had never made a film before, and I was doing a production of Romeo and Juliet on the stage when this audition came up for Star Wars. And everybody in town was going in on this. And Brian DePalma was sitting in the corner of all the interviews that George was giving. And he was kind of like making his little mental notes to say, okay, George can only pick so many, you know, I'll see what's left. And that's how I ended up working my first film.
I came out to LA, and it was just a magical thing that one of the first auditions I went on was this dual audition that George Lucas and Brian DePalma had. I just remember right away Brian looking at me, and I could just sort of tell that he liked me. And then George Lucas was just kind of stern-faced, and Brian turned to him and said, I'll put this one on my list.
My career at the time of Carrie was like, what career? You know, I didn't really have a career at that time. I was just starting in films. I had been working in New York doing commercials and studying acting. So I had the movie bug, and I decided to come out to Los Angeles, and nothing was happening, and I didn't really have many interviews. And so by November, I was fed up. I said, that's it. This is the movie business. This is for me. I'm going back to New York. And I was coming out of the steam room at the gym, and I heard this woman's voice, Nancy? Is that Nancy? And I turned around, and it was casting director. She said, oh, I'm casting this movie, and I can't believe I haven't seen you. I've been casting for 3 months. It's the last day, and you probably won't get the part, but it's a really good script, and at least you'll get to meet a director. And I said, okay. So I went and picked up the script and read the script, and I was the last person, the last day, to read for Carrie.
I went on an audition for Phantom of the Paradise, and I had a lot of attitude back then. And DePalma was kind of intrigued by that. And so he kind of took an interest in me, and he didn't cast me in Phantom, but he called me in to loop minor characters in the Phantom of the Paradise. And then he had me do several minor characters in Obsession as well. And months went by, and he called me one day and he said he'd like to take me to dinner. And he gave me the book, Carrie. He said, this is going to be my next movie, and I want you to play the part of the gym teacher. So I read the book, and it was this teeny part. And then a few months later, they sent me the script, and he had actually incorporated the part of the principal with the gym teacher, so that it was a fabulous part. It was a wonderful debut part in a movie. After that, he had me loop the little boy on the bicycle that, you know, rides through this creepy Carrie, creepy Carrie.
Creepy Carrie, creepy Carrie!
And he made me do it over and over and over again, and he would just be back in the control room, dying laughing.
Oh, oh.
I don't recall him telling me that it was Cameron DePalma, his nephew.
Sissy and I met on a film called Badlands, Terry Malick directed, and that was in 1972 out in Colorado. Later, after Badlands, the first De Palma film I did was Phantom of the Paradise, and I was working as a production designer. When that film was over, he asked me to work on Carrie. My wife Sissy, who worked as a set dresser, decorator on Phantom, helping me out in a pinch because we had no money or any crew, read the book, Carrie, and wanted to try out for the part.
Sissy had done a couple of films, but I had my eye set for a young actress I had seen in a movie where she has to get an abortion, and she was very touching and moving, and I thought this girl was going to get the part.
Brian was meeting with everyone, and he would meet us in big groups, and he'd have one person read Carrie, and then, he'd mix it all up. So I was feeling a little weird because I was only testing for one. So I didn't have as big a shot as everybody else did of getting in the film. So I got this commercial, and it just happened to be on the same day as the test, and I thought, oh, I'll call Brian and see what I can do.
I said, Sissy, I think you should take the commercial because I got my eye on this girl. I think she's going to be something.
I think I said some expletive and hung up the phone. It just made me so mad. I reread the book the day before the screen test, and I think I rubbed Vaseline in my hair, and I found some old sailor suit that my mother had made for me in 7th grade, and I took the hem out of it, and I was really into it, and I was feeling very sorry for myself, which was perfect for the character. So when I went into the test the next morning, I don't think I even washed my face. They had hair and makeup there, and they saw me come in, and they just ran for me because I would just look so awful, and of course I was, no. I think that I felt so used and abused at that point because I knew Brian, I was not his favorite. And that worked for me. I just decided I was gonna get it.
She came in and did the test and, of course, blew everybody away.
Because I was working on the film's production designer, the next day I went to see the results of all the tests. And the girl that Brian had wanted came on and did her rendition of Carrie, and then Sissy came on and just like knocked people's socks off. It was so great. Well, Sissy was waiting for me out in the parking lot of the car because she was anxious to see how it went.
And he came running out and said, "Hey, you got the part. Ask for whatever you want." Which was very little, I might add.
The idea of Piper came from Marcia Nassiter, who was an executive at United Artists at the time. And I'd always been an admirer of Piper Laurie. And I thought, this is an interesting idea.
I'd done The Hustler, and I retired for 15 years until I was asked to do Carrie. I no longer had an agent, but a wonderful woman who had been my agent years before in New York City called and said, "I have a script here. I'm going to set it up and read it." So I did, and I thought it was sort of a cliche part, and I didn't get it. And I was talking to my husband that evening, and I said, "No." He said, "Well, Brian DePalma has a comedic approach to just about everything he does." And I thought, oh, that's the secret. I didn't read it properly. So I reread it, and I thought, oh, this is a satire. And so I took the train into New York City, and I met Brian DePalma, and he was so charming, and he didn't make me feel as if I were being interviewed or interrogated. He told me a lot about himself, and we said goodbye, and I took the train back to Woodstock and got a message that they wanted me to do the movie.
The reason my mother, Priscilla Pointer, plays my mother in Carrie was Brian's idea. He had done that in, I believe it was Sisters. Maybe it was Jennifer Salt's mother played her mother, and he really liked that dynamic of the truth right there.
As far as hearing about the project of Carrie, Amy was cast as Sue Snell. And because Brian had already had a history of using a mother and daughter together in films, he asked if I would read for it, and I did, and because it was the part of Amy's mother, I played it extremely well.
I think we got the best group of actors that were around at the time, and they connected with the audience, and many of them went on to have long careers.
After the movie was all cast, we spent a week together, the cast. And we held a class election, and we kind of played these kind of theater games to sort of, within the character, to kind of connect us all.
And I remember I was doing this parts over and over again, pairing them up, switching them around, trying improvisations. I mean, and everybody, of course, was very eager to try anything I could dream of, basically.
And then when we finally got to the actual stage and we began to shoot, there was no discussion about character and why you're doing this or that. He felt that he had already done his work with the actors, and now he was concerned with the camera.
Okay, game point, 15-14. This team serves.
People always think that the shower sequence is the opening sequence of the film, but I would like to point out that the opening sequence of the film is a volleyball game in which it took us so long to get the ball to keep going over the net. I mean, we had to like find out who can actually get it over the net.
I was only signed on initially for 2 weeks, but after that opening scene of the volleyball game where I'm just supposed to go, Carrie! And I hit her over the head with my baseball hat, which I wore in every scene, and that was the other thing. I wore it to the audition, and Brian said, when you show up, you keep that hat. And I said, what do you mean? He said, just bring the hat. And the first thing on the set when he saw me was, did you bring your red baseball hat? And I said, of course.
All the actresses knew that they were going to have to be naked or partially naked, which created a tremendous amount of tension in the cast. They had all kinds of anxieties about doing it, and a few of the actresses finally balked and said, I can't do this, we're crying. And fortunately, some of them were troopers and played it completely naked, and you see some with clothes on and some partially dressed, and that's how we arrived at that slow motion opening shot.
In a way, it worked out really well because we all bonded in that scene. We all bonded through our fear and all the stuff that was going on. And I remember we did talk about some smoke and fog and maybe an arm here and a leg there, but it was kind of full everything, which I didn't mind. I thought it was very beautiful, so I couldn't really be too upset about it.
I knew I was already at my locker, so I felt a little safer, and I wasn't as terrified as everyone else, but I think what came out of it is so beautiful. To be in a horror film with such eroticism and beauty and grace, it's a unique thing.
Fortunately, Sissy had to do all this sort of naked soaping of her body before any of the girls got into the shower. And at that point, I was allowing the kids to see the rushes, so they thought, oh my God, I mean, Sissy can do this, we can do this.
That shower scene, of course, I worried about that and wanted it to work, wanted it to be authentic, wanted to be able to lose myself in it and not think about being naked in front of the world. I went to Brian and I said, Brian, I'm so worried about this scene. What's it like? And he thought for a minute. Well, Sissy, it's like getting hit by a Mack truck. I said, like a Mack truck? It's like getting hit by a Mack truck. He obviously wanted shock. And I went to Jack, who we had decided would be in the shower with me, putting the blood in my hand because that was going to be out of frame, and then I'd bring it up to see it. And I said, Jack, he said it would be like getting hit by a Mack truck.